Welcome to episode 3 of the Marginal Fly Fisherman. I asked you guys for ideas on Facebook what the hell I was supposed to talk about. There were a couple of good ones. Doug, you wanted me to talk about Judgment Days. I'm not ready. I think Judgment Days needs its own YouTube channel if I'm going to talk about it. For everybody else that doesn't know what I'm talking about, if you go on Facebook, look for Judgment Days. D-A-Z-E. You will find out that I am a huge geek. Movie geek. That has nothing to do with fishing. But a lot of fun. But I'm not going to talk about Judgment Days on this channel. Not yet. Another question somebody asked was, what was my favorite fishing trip of 2019? That's a good question. Oh, I don't want this tip. I'm probably going to screw this burning up while I'm talking. Apparently I can't do two things at once. So, favorite fishing trip of 2019. If anybody knows me, you know I can't pick favorites. Something as simple as, hey Mark, what's your favorite color? I don't have an answer. So favorites is tough. I know I've been thinking about it. I did narrow it down to 2 trips last year. One because of the amount of fish made it probably the best as far as catch rates go for 2019, as far as they went. And the other one was for the unknown factor that we were going into and it turning out awesome. One was with Wayne Weber, a float down a river, and one was a hike into a remote stream with my buddy John Markey. I think I will talk about the trip with Wayne, this one, and save the one with John Markey to probably maybe the next video or a video or two down the line. So Wayne Weber is a good friend of mine. He's a guide. He guides on the Salmon River. He guides on some lakes. He guides in that area. And he will every now and then text me and say, I got a really cool idea for a float. I got a place I want to check out. Do you want to be a part of this? You want to go help me explore? Well, anybody who knows me knows that that is just a stupid question. Yes, I want to go and check this place out. Obviously, I'd have to be dead to not want to go check these places out. So I agree to go on this trip with Wayne. He says, I don't really know a whole lot about it. I know what it's like at the ends, but I want to float this thing and see, 1, if there's fish in it, and 2, if it would be worth guiding people on it, taking them on this float, offering it as an option for his guide business. I'm in. So we dropped my car off at a bridge at the pullout point. And then we take his truck with the Smith Fly raft in the back of it, and we drive I don't know how many miles of seasonal roads to get to this one place where he wants to put the raft in. This is a trip that I know what water it was on, but I've looked at a map in this area, and there are so many damn blue lines that are all the same branch of this one main river. They're all labeled the same thing. It looks like the vein system in a human leg, but they all have the same branch name on them. So where we were, I have no idea. If I were to try to drive these seasonal roads on my own to get to the same place, I'd get lost. And there's no cell service, so I'd get lost and you'd probably never hear from me again, which might not be such a horrible thing. But anyways, it was an ordeal just getting to it. it's not a place that somebody's going to stumble across and go, oh, this is that spot that they were talking about. Yeah, good luck. That's not going to happen. So we get there and we park next to a one vehicle bridge, one lane bridge with a feeder stream running underneath it. When I say feeder stream, it was a stream, it might have been 6 feet wide, maybe 7 feet wide. And it was about 70 feet up from where it dumped into the main river. So first thing we got to do is get this smith fly raft down to this feeder stream, which they're small and they're light. They're really easy for two people to move around. But it was a really big incline next to this bridge, getting down the side of the bridge, and there was a telephone pole there. The only thing out in this area are camps. Obviously, they have some power out there because there's a telephone pole. And if you were to walk in between the telephone pole and the bridge, not a big deal. But once you have a raft turned on its side with one person on one end and one person on the other, trying to fit it in between the guardrail and the telephone pole, pushing through pricker bushes and trying not to drag the raft on the sharp guardrail, then it becomes a bit of a challenge. Once we headed in the feeder stream, I felt much better. So I sat in the front of the smith fly. Wayne sat in the middle at the oars. And I started casting as soon as we were moving on the feeder stream off to the side. It really looked like fishy water, and I gotta believe that if you actually just waited and fished the feeder stream, I guarantee you'd catch fish. But we were just trying to use it as our on-ramp to the main river. So I didn't catch anything in that 60 to 70 feet of feeder stream. But absolutely as soon as the raft came out on the main river, I made a cast. Across the river. The size of the river might have been 50, 60 feet wide. But this is not a big river. You know, it's small. It's just one branch of another river. And not super deep either. So I made a cast all the way across to some foam. We had been on the main river for literally less than a minute. And wham, brown trout. Nothing big, but it was a brown trout on, first cast of the river. JP always tells me that a fish on your first cast is bad luck. So I could have ruined the trip right then. And I remember saying that to Wayne when I got it. Oh, Jordan would tell me this is bad luck. Can't have that. Well, let me tell you, that first fish on that first cast of the river was not bad luck. Not at all. That river, for the next 300 yards, it was brown trout after brown trout. Nothing big. We're talking what you would probably recognize as a stock size. 9 to 12 inches. But it was just a lot of them in the first 300 yards of the river. Once we went beyond that 300 yards, we beached it we banked it in one spot, and we got out and we fished a really hard tail out. Hard running. Didn't last long. It was the water settled down and got slow pretty quick. We fished all that and more brown trout, and also in that same spot came the first brook trout. And I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. Browns and brookies. Not bad. I didn't expect it to be a really crazy day. I figured it was going to settle down. I don't have great fishing days like that very often at all. I get skunked more often than not. So we're back in the raft, and from that point on, it was nothing but brook trout. It was so awesome. If you're talking about brook trout in New York State, especially, I don't know if they were stocked or wild. There were some really small ones, 4 inches or so. I gotta believe those would be wild, but can I prove it? No. I love all the people who are like, oh, that's a wild fish. That's a native fish. Well, you don't know. You're just guessing. Unless you're going to take a DNA sample, which I've done. So I'm not talking out of my ass. Unless you take a DNA sample, you don't know if that fish is wild or stocked or native. And just to throw this out there, native and wild are two different things. I hear a lot of people say, oh, it was a native brown. It was well, guess what? If you catch a brown trout in the U.S., it's not native. It might be wild. It may have reproduced in the wild, but native means it belongs here. It's been here. Native also means that its DNA goes back to the fish that were always here. You can't stock some fish and then have wild fish out of those stocked fish and then generations later call them natives. They're not. The DNA is what makes it native, and you don't know if you've caught a native fish or not for certain, unless either A, the state is telling you that those waters are native fish. You know, your environmental state agencies know this stuff sometimes. Otherwise, you're just guessing. So anyways, we were catching brookies. Some of them may have been wild. Don't know. Some of them may have been stocked. Don't know. But it was a lot of them. And this is what kind of river this was. There was some fast water. I'm not a whitewater rafter, but easily class 1 whitewater. And if I had to guess, I'll bet there was some class 2. I stayed standing up and kept casting the whole time. There were a couple times Wayne would be like, you might want to sit down for this spot. And then I'd look up in the middle of stripping my streamer and be like, oh, crap, yeah, I'm going to sit down. And it'd be some pretty gnarly stuff we were getting ready to go through. And stuff that probably would have chucked me over the side. But in spots like this, I didn't like to loop up my fly line, hold it in my hand. I wanted to keep the fly in the water. So as soon as we came out of spots like that, I could just use the line being loaded in the water over here and flip it over to the other side and be ready to cast in a second's notice. As soon as we came out of those spots, I was casting again. So I was catching fish while I was literally just trying to keep my streamer in the water. There were spots of fast-moving, flat bottom that it may have been a foot deep. It may have been only several inches deep. Over these really good, you were losing, they were pretty steep gradients. The river would get fast in those spots. And the water was moving over these huge, flat river bottom sections, super fast. There should have been no reason for fish to be holding in these areas. There were no cracks in the rocks. There was no place for gravel to build up. There's no place for food to build up. And I would whip my streamer over into an area like that as we were passing through it, just to keep it in the water and just to get it ready to load up a cast to the other side of the river. I do it back and forth a few times as we're going through these areas. So as soon as we were at the end of that, one of those stretches, the next time that streamer came flying out of the water, it was landing, ready to fish. Well, I was catching fish in those big, flat, fast areas. These little brook trout were just jumping on the streamer, appearing out of nowhere. It was pretty cool. I think I used the word ridiculous a couple times. Wayne was shaking his head quite a bit because they're really the reasons these fish were in these spots. Well, unknown, because they shouldn't have been in those spots. The fishing was just that good that day. And then we'd hit some slower, calm spots. And, you know, we'd get out, bank the raft, and we'd fish some areas. So you had areas like that were in a gorge. And then we came out into a flatland that was all meadow. It looked like pictures that I see in the magazines of out west, just without the mountains. No huge Rocky Mountains in the background. Take one of those pictures with all the small trees and undergrowth and the scrub brush with the mountains, and delete the mountains, and that's what this area looked like. It was awesome. And that's where the biggest brook trout came, was an area in a meadow. A deep, slow run. Didn't have to try hard for any of these fish. It was really cool. And then it would go back into a gorge and back into the fast pockets of whitewater. And one section sticks out. We always laugh about this. I was standing up, leaning against that front bar. That bar was just awesome. The Smith fly it rules for that. Anytime he says you want to go, yes, I'm going for sure. If we're taking that raft, it's spectacular. So I'm standing in the front of this thing, leaning against the bar, casting my ass off, casting at everything. Any water I saw, even if it didn't look good, I was casting to it, and 50-50 chance that a fish would appear out of nowhere and take it. It was just wild. And I'm doing that in this one section, standing up, and I caught a fish in a spot that just didn't make any sense, that I should have hooked up with a brookie. And we were both laughing about it. And Wayne was holding us in the middle of the river, and he had actually turned us sideways so I could bring the fish in from the side it was coming from. And as I was releasing the fish and we were laughing about it, I started to realize my surroundings again, see things, hear things, and the first thing that came to my consciousness after letting this fish go was, what is that noise? Why is it so loud all of a sudden? And I looked back at Wayne, and I was going to say, what is that all, why did it get so loud all of a sudden? I was thinking in my head as I'm looking at him, and I see the look on his face, and it's one of those, and he says, oh, you better sit down. And I turned around and I looked, and I sat my happy butt down. Probably the fastest sit down I have ever done, because we had just started to drift down the river, and the noise got loud because there was a good probably 4.5 foot drop. We'll call it a little waterfall. And we were on top of it before we realized it was there, because we were laughing about this fish that we shouldn't have caught in the spot. And so Wayne held us above the waterfall, and we looked at it, and we're like, what the heck do we do with this? And it was just a straight 4 to 4.5 foot shelf the whole way across the river. If we had seen it sooner, the river did kind of split off where this 4 foot shelf was. If we had gone back upriver, if we had spotted it sooner, we could have gone to the left a little bit, and it was it was fast, but it was a long ramp instead of this drop off. Well, it was too late. We were trapped at the drop off. So a few seconds, maybe a full minute of sitting there. What do we do? Well, we could try to come over here, and we could try to move over here and drop down on this. And finally, after a couple of discussions, we realized, you know what? We just have to go over it. So we nosed over the thing, dropped about 4.5 feet, and it actually was not bad at all. But when you suddenly realize that this is right there in front of you, it catches you off guard. It made for a good laugh. That was the only real big drop off. There were some at the end that were like that. So it would go between good fishable water and catching fish that day to not good fishing water, white water, and still catching fish in it all day long. It was spectacular. At the beginning, we caught browns, first 300 yards or so. The rest of the day was brookies. As we're getting to the bridge at the end of the day, where my car was parked, I made a cast for the hell of it under the bridge in the middle, and ended up with a rainbow right at the takeout. So browns, brookies, and rainbows in this thing. It was probably the most successful fishing of 2019, is why it always sticks out in my mind. It was really cool. We went a couple weeks later because he wanted to check it out. It had rained a lot and the water had come way up. He was watching flow gauges on the main river, and he knew it was on its way down, but it was still high. And he was trying to convince JP to go on this day. So JP is texting me at night, asking me questions, what he should take, what I fished there, should he even go? And I said, yes, you should go. So Wayne and I were both trying to convince JP to take a day off work and go. And in the process, they ended up convincing me to take a day off of work and go. Also, the water was high. I think I caught a 4-inch minnow that day. Jordan didn't catch anything. I think Wayne caught a couple of really small browns on mop flies because, well, everything eats a mop fly. I don't care how much you hate them. And he just wanted to catch fish. But the next time we went, it was nowhere near as good. Which is how fishing is. One day, it is awesome. And the next day, you might not catch a single thing. And you also know that one day it could be awesome, and then an hour later, everything's done. You just can't tell. That's fishing. So it was a really cool trip. I'd do it again in a heartbeat, and we're going to do it again this year. I don't know that he guided anyone on it. He was supposed to, and then I think weather turned bad. So, there's got to be more time for more scouting runs. You can't be too careful with these things. You've got to know what it is you're getting into. And, well, somebody's got to do it, so I will take one for the team, and I will go fishing to find these things out. But that was probably the most successful fishing of 2019. Probably next time I will tell you about the most unexpected fishing of 2019, literally because all we knew was there was a blue line on the map and had nothing else about it. We didn't even know if there'd be fish in it, and that ended up being pretty cool. So that'll be a cool story. So until next time, have a couple of beers, smile a little bit. Things will get better. You're not going to be locked up forever. Until then, you always got stories. Go buy a book. Get out fishing on your own. Don't go with all your friends. It's got to be alone. Social distancing, all that crap. Buy my books off of Amazon. Get yourself motivated to go out if you can't. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Marginal Fly Fisherman. I didn't even screw up a rock. Spectacular.